Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Art of Being a Woman. I'm your host, Courtney, and today we are discussing the art of loving your own company. I honestly cannot wait to dive into this topic because it is something that I wish for each and every one of you listening to this episode, and honestly, every single person on this planet. It's not always easy to love your own company, although for some it comes very naturally to them. But this episode is for those that find it quite challenging. There's some discomfort when it comes to spending time with yourself. And perhaps it's not that you don't enjoy spending time with yourself. Maybe you do, but it's not fun. It's not exciting. It doesn't make you feel happy necessarily. It's just something that you do when you need a break from the world, perhaps, or there's nothing else better to do. We're going to get into it. And by the end of this episode, it is my goal that you not only look forward to spending more time with yourself, but you enjoy every second of it. You savor it and you love your own company so deeply that it's honestly really hard for someone to take your time and attention and energy away from you if they're not matching the happiness and the love that you've created for yourself in your own company. The 4 steps we're going to talk about are the following. Step 1, understand why solitude feels uncomfortable at first. Step 2, master filling your own cup. Step 3, know the cost of avoiding yourself. And step 4, feel the freedom of loving your own company. Let's begin with step 1. Understand why solitude feels uncomfortable at first. From my personal experience, solitude was uncomfortable for me at first because I always felt like I was missing out on life. I didn't really understand the value of solitude. I didn't understand the value of spending time with myself. And although I've made the most out of those moments at the time, I was able to relax, recharge my energy, pour into the things that I was very interested in. Something was just a little off. I felt like I was spending time with myself because I had no choice, and it wasn't something that I was necessarily excited about. Also, there were moments when I would be relaxing in my room and there was no background noise. There was no music playing. There was no TV on. And my thoughts would become a lot louder. And not all of them were positive. In fact, many of them were not positive. They were just pretty negative. My thoughts would always depend on what had happened throughout the day. It was never something that I thought I can have control over. I allowed my thoughts to persuade my emotions, and therefore those moments alone were very uncomfortable. I would catch myself always putting on music when I was alone, always putting on the TV in the background, even if it was just calming waves and the view was an ocean, anything to distract my mind from thinking of all these thoughts that were making me either anxious, upset, or uncomfortable. Now, why do I share this? I'm sharing this because I know I'm not the only person in the world that experiences this. I know we all have intrusive thoughts. It doesn't make anyone crazy. It's really how everyone's mind works. And I believe that many of us, without realizing, we distract ourselves from these thoughts rather than confronting them and facing them head on. But through my own experience, I've learned that if we do not face our thoughts head on when we are alone, we're never truly going to be able to fall in love with our own company. And it's kind of dangerous, in my opinion, if you do not fall in love with your own company, because then you're going to be that person that is constantly jumping through hoops to maintain relationships in your life. Whether it's a romantic partner, whether it's friendships, whether it's family members that you might not fully enjoy being around. Regardless of what it is, you might feel this desperation to maintain relationships out of fear of being on your own. And I completely get it because I used to feel that way in my own life. But when we do things out of fear, we are just delaying the inevitable. And the inevitable is life is going to force us to face it. There is no way around that. I actually have an episode dedicated to fear and overcoming it. It is episode number 9, The Art of Transforming Fear into Power. I believe that was one of my favorite episodes that I ever recorded because it really changed my life. Not just recording the episode, but facing my fears changed my life. Because every time I do it, I realize how limitless my potential is and how limitless all of our potentials are. And that is something that you really get good at doing when you spend time with yourself without distractions. Because instead of avoiding these negative thoughts that make you uncomfortable, you allow yourself to confront them and face them even though you're uncomfortable. Over time, you realize they're just thoughts and you're the one in control. You're the one with the power. Thoughts will come and go no matter what. We decide what we choose to believe and where we put our attention. I'm not saying to ignore every negative thought that you get. I believe you need to confront them, hear what the negative side of your mind has to say, not so that it can put you down, but just to see where it comes from. For example, if you get a lot of negative thoughts that tell you you're not good enough for something that you really want in life, you need to figure out why that thought comes up. And also try to figure out how often it comes up. The more often a negative thought pops up, the more you believe it to be true at a certain level. And because you believe it to be true and you give it attention, it's a very strong thought. Once you do that inner work and you realize why certain negative thoughts will not leave you alone, it becomes easier for you to become more conscious of the thoughts that cross your mind throughout the day. And instead of allowing these thoughts to consume you or making you feel as if you need to distract yourself, you begin to have this clarity that there was a part of yourself that had doubt and it was going on in your mind unchecked. So, to conclude this step, where we went a little off topic, but not really, because this is very necessary in order to understand why solitude feels uncomfortable. If you are someone that experiences discomfort when you are alone, really try to sit with yourself in silence, which is basically meditation. Try to meditate. If that's too boring for you, which I completely understand, journal. Those are my 2 best pieces of advice I can give you for this step. And if you do either one of these things, or even better, if you do both of these things on a daily basis for 5 minutes a day, you will notice how this discomfort will ease up. Just remember, consistency is key. It's really not about you listening to this episode, getting inspired, and then journaling or meditating for 30 minutes and then forgetting to do it for the rest of the week. I would rather you do it for 5 minutes every single day, the whole week, and you will notice that after a week, you feel a lot better about yourself. You feel a lot better when you're alone because this solitude is what refuels your energy and restores your peace and your love of life. Step 2, master filling your own cup. This is easier said than done, honestly. I feel like when I first started getting into my self-love journey, healing journey, whatever you want to call it, I would go online, and luckily there are so many influencers that share their experiences, and a lot of it is very helpful. But in my opinion, I felt like a lot of it was surface level. I'm not really going to focus on the physical things you could do for yourself, like a bubble bath, cooking yourself a nice meal. Those are all great things, but I'm talking about filling your inner cup, your soul. How do you feel whole? How do you feel fulfilled? How do you feel happy to the point where you don't need anything outside of yourself to make you happy? How do we get to that point where we don't need material things to feel full? One of the biggest things that helped me fill my own cup, and this is something I only started doing recently, I started in September, was going on walks in nature away from people. Wow, this has truly changed my life to the point where I do it every single day for at least 40 minutes a day. And if I don't do it, I feel the difference so much. The sadness of missing a day fuels me to make sure that I go on a walk that very next day. I don't know if there's even science behind it, but spiritually, wow, something about being surrounded by the most simple things refills my cup like nothing else. I'll be honest, I don't walk in silence. I usually have an audiobook playing, or I'll listen to a podcast. I keep my phone in my pocket. I don't like to hold my phone in my hand. And I just make sure that I'm looking around at the nature and I'm looking at the sky and I'm listening to the noise of the cars passing by or the leaves crunching underneath my feet. And it just makes me so grateful to be alive. And it also makes me think to myself, why did I never do this before? I've lived in my neighborhood for so long and I never really walked around that much. So that's something I definitely recommend you trying if you're not doing it already. I know that a lot of people go for walks. I don't know why I did not, but if you're listening to this and you feel like your life is too busy, or you're not in the mood, walking is boring, I advise you to try it for a week and see how you feel. Not only that, I would advise you to go on a walk when you're feeling very low on energy. That is something that really helps me on a daily basis because on my work days, I travel over an hour each way just to get to work. So I leave my house around 6 a.m., then I get home around 4 p.m., which is pretty good if you ask me. But when I get home, I get pulled in one direction with my family, another direction with friends, and before I know it, I can feel very drained and very tired. When I get to those moments where I feel like I'm getting a little bit snappy and a little bit irritated because I am running on empty, I know it's time for me to go on a walk. And when I do, I come back a whole new person. Another thing I would recommend is finding a hobby that excites you and that makes you happy. This is not always easy to do, and I know that a lot of people, when they are suggesting ways for you to spend time with yourself, they always say do an activity, but I think it's better when it's a hobby because then you can build on a skill and you get that sense of confidence and that sense of accomplishment because you're working towards something and it feels more fulfilling that way. For me right now, it's been baking. I don't know what came over me with that, but I'm not complaining. I've realized that baking things that I see online that look so delicious brings me a lot of joy because I'm creating something. Baking feels like creation. And on top of that, I have a lot of little siblings, and it just warms my heart like nothing else to have them come home from school and there's a treat waiting for them. Because I know when I was little, those would be the best days when I would come home and the house smelled so good and sweet. So I advise you to do some digging and try to discover what hobby excites you. There's something out there for everyone. I definitely recommend that it involves some sort of movement if you're not choosing to walk. It just needs to be something you do alone. And you do it for the sake of making yourself happy, nothing else. Step 3, know the cost of avoiding yourself. We touched on this a little bit in step 1, but I'm going to really emphasize it in step 3 because it is so important to know the cost of avoiding yourself. I'm going to get very personal right now. I always feel like I'm very personal on each episode, but I'm a Scorpio, so I could possibly be sharing the bare minimum and be feeling so impressed with myself when everyone does this. Who knows? But in my past romantic relationships, I was fortunate enough to be with guys that truly loved me. And I knew that. They would pour into me, fill up my cup, and I didn't know this at the time. But now that I look back, I know that it was never enough. It didn't matter what they did for me, what they said to me, the amount of time they spent with me. It was never enough. I would always feel like I needed more. And unfortunately, I wasn't healed enough and I wasn't self-aware enough to know that I felt that way because I didn't know how to fill up my own cup. I didn't know how to enjoy spending time with myself. So I put that responsibility of being happy and feeling fulfilled on the person I was dating. And honestly, that just set them up for failure, really, because it's impossible for someone else to fill our own cup. That's why people talk about energy vampires. And it's crazy for me to realize that I was most probably an energy vampire in my past relationships. I was definitely needy. I needed a lot of attention. Otherwise, I was very unsatisfied and unhappy in the relationship. And I thought that it was a relationship issue, but it was a me issue. It was something that no matter who I was dating, it would never go away. It was only when I was single that I realized that I need to love being single as much as I love being in a relationship. And thank God I got to that point, but not everyone gets to that point. And I know of many people that still are not at that point. And they're married. They're 20, 30, 40 years older than me. It's definitely possible for us to live our lives avoiding loving our own company. And I mean truly loving our own company. But it puts us in a position where we are bending over backwards and changing who we are to be loved, to not be alone. And we end up becoming miserable deep down, whether we want to admit it to ourselves or not. I wanted to make sure that I shared the cost of avoiding ourselves because I feel like many people are not aware. I know that I wasn't aware. I really thought that as long as I find a guy that is willing to constantly give me attention and energy, love, affection, etc., I wouldn't need to enjoy my own company that much because I would never be alone. It wasn't until I grew up and I realized even the happiest of marriages require you to be alone and separated from your partner. That is just life. We are not here to become attached to anything or to anyone, even if we are in a relationship with them. I definitely did this with friends as well. I was very close with my friends and they were very close with me, but I'm sure that I did not give myself and them space to be apart without it affecting our relationship. Now that I'm on the other side and I have learned to really love my own company, I don't feel anxious in relationships. That's what it is. When we avoid ourselves, we create that anxious attachment in relationships. If you are someone that has experienced feeling an anxious attachment to someone, you understand how uncomfortable and how painful that feels. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So really consider this podcast episode and really consider prioritizing loving your own company so that no relationship and no thing outside of you can take away your happiness and take away your peace and your love of life and your love for yourself. Step 4, feel the freedom of loving your own company. The freedom of loving your own company does not come right away. It took me years, honestly, because even though I was slowly growing to love my own company, I still believed deep down that I would love spending time with other people a little bit more than spending time with myself. It wasn't until I started writing and podcasting, which was last year, I started to love my own company more than loving the company of other people. It doesn't happen right away. It takes trial and error because we can fool ourselves into believing that we've grown, we've changed, but it's not until we are tested over and over again that we have the opportunity to choose spending time with ourselves. When we have no plans and we decide to make the most out of it, that's one thing. But let's say you do have plans and you're very excited for them, but then they get canceled last minute. Are you still very excited that you get unexpected time to spend with yourself? Probably not. If you do, you probably do really love spending time with yourself, and that's great. But if you don't, and you get bummed when you have to stay at home instead of going out and having drinks and partying, really consider why one is better than the other. Yes, it's great to spend time with your friends. That's definitely fulfilling, but you don't need other people to feel fulfilled. And that's the whole point of this topic. It should feel equal. And that's if you're fortunate enough to have great friends and a great relationship with yourself. When we start to fall in love with our own company, we realize that whether we're doing something with other people or we're home alone, the reason why we're happy is because we are the ones making ourselves happy. It's not the people outside of us. It's not the things that we're doing with our time. It's the fact that we're excited to be doing what we're doing and we're making the most out of it because we love ourselves and we appreciate our life. Our life doesn't have to be perfect for us to make the most out of it, for us to enjoy it. There are always ways to increase our joy in life. We just have to be willing to explore what those things are. And when we do, we really feel the freedom that comes with loving our own company. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. I really enjoyed recording it. Thank you for taking time to listen. I hope you have an amazing week. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate this podcast. I love you all. Until next time, bye for now.